how to get your channel killed in the modern era. If you are fighting racism or any ism, and you start adopting the tactics, attitudes, and beliefs of your opponent, just flipping them on their head, which is a simple tendency that people have when they're trying to fight something terrible. In order for you to avoid having the definition apply to you, you have a couple of choices. Don't do the same damn bad things, or just redefine what the words mean. In the case of the word racism, which is the negative treatment of other people exclusively or primarily based on something they can't change about themselves. Specifically, it's not just bigotry where it can apply to everything. Racism is based on mistreating others or hating on them or whatever based on perceived thing that is defined as race. That's actually what racism is. That's what it's meant. But someone has decided to add to the definition, and it's not a slippery slope thing, they do believe that this is a good idea, that racism is either inclusive or exclusively a system of advantage based on race given to a group of people. Now, one of them is treating a group negatively, and the other one is not exclusive, but at the same time, maybe, giving another group an advantage. So, if your hatred of a group of people based on their race doesn't give anybody an advantage, you can't be called a racist, according to some people. The screamy, loud internet includes the I can't be racist because I'm black because I have no systemic power over anybody. So, there are no black racists. There are no black Hebrew Israelites that literally call everybody who's white an Edomite who deserves to die because all white people are subhumans that need to be destroyed because the Bible tells them so. But they're not racist because they have no power. They're screaming from the lower echelons of society and our tier list, almost gamification of society. They can't be called racist because they literally scream that all white people need to be destroyed and actually talk about not genocide, but racial purification by destruction of anybody white. And yeah, I'm not saying all black Hebrew Israelites do that. Just all of them I have been able to find on the internet so far. I mean, that has nothing, I'm being dead ass honest about it. I only met one in person, and he told me that he and all black people like him who believe the way he does will eventually exterminate all white people. But of course, that doesn't sound exactly the same as any racist that wants to get rid of any other group. Of course not. But the difference is, one form of racism is practiced by a group of people that are in a protected status of a privilege given to them based on their race, and a privilege given to them based on their society being built upon racism, is the definition. Exclusive versus inclusive. If you create a definition that has two components, two terms, one of them based on mistreating others, and another definition that is added in to the Merriam-Webster and several other ones, a system of advantage based on race to benefit one group, and another part of it that says it negatively impacts any other group or a group or all groups outside of that. Does that mean that racism has to include the component that you're part of a group that has power, therefore you're a racist, not a powerless person screaming, can't be a racist? The systemic racism versus racism definition. Now let's go on to a favorite definition. Feminism versus equal rights versus human rights. Equal rights means all people should have the same rights, period, full stop. They shouldn't have their rights restricted based on anything unless there's some compelling reason for that to be done. Feminism, the actual definition at one time, meant just equal rights for, let's maintain or establish equality for women. Then there's third wave feminism that seeks to take a revenge upon an entire half of the population. Or not, depending on who you talk to. Sexism. Well, I'm not sexist because I'm a woman. It's only sexism when men do it because they have power. It's the same sort of definition set. Now, why am I making this video? Obviously, I want YouTube to kill off my channel for me discussing this, actually bringing this up. Do you really believe that it's only racist if the group of people doing it have the ability to enforce their racism? This is actually a decent argument because what it means is effective racism versus ineffective racism. Your average black Hebrew Israelite screaming on the corner, telling all white people that they're literally Edomites and are devils, or Yaqub believers who state flat out that white people were created to torment black people and need to be exterminated. That shit really does dead ass happen. It really does. That is a group of people. I'm not joking here. It's not a mythology. And someone will immediately start screaming, well, they're a minority. Yes, they're a minority of the population. There's a minority of out-and-out Nazis as well. There's a covert population, ever since it became much more difficult to get away with this shit, of Nazis. I just call them Nazis. So they're nothing else. They're not white supremacists. They're just Nazis. Just shut up. And they live all over the planet. And for some reason, they've chosen to live in a country, the United States, where we've established rules that make being a Nazi essentially not legal, because it isn't. So they choose to come here because I guess they like picking fights. Obviously. They're just assholes. But they're a minority of the population. No. The racists are the majority of the population. Okay. The majority of people I've dealt with in person, and you're not allowed to scream, I can't know them, when you say you know all black people or whatever group that you want to protect. The absolute mind-bashing majority of people are not racist that I've run into, period, full stop. Black, white, doesn't matter. The vast majority of white people have lived in a society that's tolerated, I would say, in jokes and expressions that are not acceptable. I dealt with them when I was younger, and I was never really comfortable with this shit going on. That doesn't make me a racist piece of shit because I grew up in a society that tolerated racist shits. As I got older, it was less and less tolerated and they were driven underground. Admitting you were one of these Hitler-loving pieces of shit wasn't acceptable because we didn't accept that. And sexism got to be such a big problem in general. I mean, on a practical level, being biased against any people, any group, I call it just generalized bigotry, has no benefit. It doesn't work because if you assign a set of characteristics that you made up out of your ass to black people or gay people or straight people or men, white men my age, young people, if you decide that all blacks are a certain way, you're not accomplishing anything. You're just avoiding. You're being lazy. You're avoiding figuring out what to do with this. Yes, a vast majority of people you see in media and on YouTube videos involved in armed robberies are of a particular socioeconomic point. They're poor. We don't discuss that. Somehow it has to now be exclusively about race. That actually isn't going to solve anything. That's like saying that all white people are racist or all of them are guilty of white privilege. This white privilege idea is really basic. Me being born in the United States and having this skin color makes it to where it's a lot easier for me to get along. I have, well, that's a presumption. It's less difficult to get along. Yes. And then they quote, the average median income without a college degree. Well, I'm sure the studies are very well done, right? They don't represent numbers that I can find backed up anywhere. It was a study by this university. Yeah, they said they did it from a meta study of other studies. The studies don't corroborate it. They're showing inequality, obviously. I mean, it must be there, but the numbers are way different than what I experienced. And most importantly, I wasn't able to corroborate it because I think their study's bullshit. But, yeah, okay. We have a society where we have a big problem. But, and this is a big but, the chronic response to this is the same as the chronic response I see when it comes to violence. Just violence in general. There's a video where you can watch someone doing a stabbing attack during an armed robbery. And thankfully the clerk just flat out just shoots his ass. And problem pretty much solved. The guy lived. He just stopped attacking. Stop your attacker. You don't have to kill them. We have a society where there's a bunch of violence going on. So, like violence being blamed on video games, which fucking have nothing to do with it, let's blame long rifles instead of the pistols that are actually used. Let's blame movies instead of people becoming violent because they're desperately trying to get away with something. If you're not aware of it, the average armed robber who pulled a gun and pointed at you and said, "Give me your money," emptied the cash register, is doing so, and they're in fight or flight mode. They are in a position where if you point a gun at them, they legitimately are trying to defend their life. I'm not excusing what they're doing. I would still, if I was attacked by somebody and had the opportunity, I would shoot him. Wouldn't kill them. I'd try not to. I'd want to make it to where they couldn't fucking shoot me again. Like, leaving the building. Go ahead, rob the place. I'm out. I'm not getting shot. Running works better than shooting. But if I had to shoot, I'd shoot. I don't care about their economic situation or why they did it. Because I know that if they put themselves in that position, they're expecting to get fired upon. But still, doesn't matter whether the rationale is there or not, doesn't matter whether the guilt is there or not. The main reason they're going to fire at me is that they perceive a threat. I've experienced a robbery. I refused to comply. I didn't get shot in that case. Do it. I'm disobeying you. I'm not listening. The fact that the till was empty is even more fun because he'd be like, "Where's the money?" It's already in the safe. We're closing. Eventually just left. It's going to hurt me. Gun, knife, didn't matter. I ignored everything going on and said, well, I'm going. And I'm going to lock the door. And I went out the back door and left him there. And he basically got the door unlocked because he figured out how to turn the knob and left. I was just done with the day and I didn't give a shit. Don't do that, by the way. But what was his skin color? He was a white guy. The majority of actual robberies are done pretty much across the board by whoever the population is in the area that's poor. That's actually what's going on. I don't assume color of skin is relevant when the gun is pointed at me. Neither should you. Having that kind of bias is counterproductive. I don't care if it's a gay or straight person, old or young. I don't care if they're poor or rich, but what I find out is that most of them are poor. Now, it's not drug users or whatever. It's just poor people who are desperate. They just don't have a choice anymore. They've given up. Some of them are actually just career criminals, but the majority of them the majority of actual robberies in many areas is just done by a person who's poor and desperate. The majority in some areas are done by chronic repeat offenders that you shouldn't release. They're violent criminals. The skin color is irrelevant. The number of people who get locked up when they do that, of a particular color, that bias shows up obviously. Yeah, people who are not white get locked up longer. No good reason for it. That's a real example. But deciding you're going to redefine racism so that it doesn't apply to you when you scream shit in the public or comment section, that's not going to solve anything either. Because it's racism. That's why it's not productive. That's why it's stupid. It's not just illegal, it's dumb. Not both sides. Mostly, obviously, it's one group. But still, redefining things to add in this thing doesn't exclude the other. It's just bigotry. And also, it could be a system that advantages one group over another, obviously. But don't throw out the other half of the definition because it might apply to you. Or me. Good Good day.